Hello and welcome to GCSE AQA Religious Studies, Religion and Ethics. This presentation will give you an overview of what we study at GCSE in Religious Studies at Woodkirk Academy. As you can see from the slide, there are some things in there that you will be very familiar with and some things that you probably won't be, which is why the course is so interesting and engaging and you'll get a lot from it. Okay, I hope you enjoy the presentation. As you can see from this slide tells you about some of the skills that you will develop at GCSE Religious Studies. For example, the debating skills, the skills about critical thinking, the skills about being able to discuss and debate and evaluate and look at the world in a very different perspective. And it gives you the ideas of being able to publicly speak, talk about things in a very mature and open and critical manner. And obviously it allows you to form informed conclusions in terms of how things are in and around our world. All of which are fantastic skills to have in terms of lots of different job areas that you might decide you want to go into. And how fantastic is that this GCSE contains no coursework and is all based on exams at the end of your GCSE, at the end of year 11. So you'll have year 9, year 10 and the whole of year 11 to fully prepare and get yourself ready and geared up for that final exam at the end. Here is just a number of skills that you will be developing and working on and expanding upon during your time at GCSE Religious Studies. So I'll let you have a little read of those. Throughout the GCSE, you will always be considering questions. There will be questions throughout the whole of the GCSE course in terms of the big ultimate questions, the questions of life. And one of them, to begin with, we'll be looking at God in terms of, questioning God's existence, questioning, should religion exist, why does religion exist, where does it all come from, and what is God's role within that, if there is a God at all. So please don't be thinking that this is all going to be about teaching you how to be religious, how to believe in God. Not at all. It's very much linking to critical thinking and really debating and evaluating whether or not there is an existence of any kind. We will debate and we will discuss where are we going, what are we doing here, what's the purpose, why are we actually here, where do we actually come from, do we go somewhere when we die? So we'll be looking at the big ultimate questions of life, the questions that you often will discuss, you will talk about, you will ponder over. We will bring these to life in the classroom. As you can see from this slide, you'll recognise this from your Year 8 topic, Evil and Suffering. So we will consider here whether or not God does exist in a world where we do find examples and lots of evidence of evil and suffering, and asking that question, why? Why do people suffer? Why do people commit evil things? What's the reason for that? Is there a reason for it? Is there a big design plan? What's it all about? And if this does exist in terms of evil and suffering, surely a loving God can't exist alongside. And again, those will be the debates and the critical thinking that we will have with that. Part of the ethical topics we will be looking at, do we have the right? Do we have the right to do what we please? Do we have the right to test animals? Do we have the right to use animals for our own advantage, to develop ourselves in advancements in medical technologies? We will be looking at all those ethical issues, looking at what the positives are that come out of this, but also what the negatives are, and really thinking about well, what conclusions do we draw from this? Where does religion fit in all this? As part of our religion and life topic, we will be looking at the world, looking at the environment, looking at the concepts of stewardship and dominion, and how do those two concepts there contradict each other. Stewardship, this idea that God has given us the world to look after future generations and people to come, and our families in the future. But then this idea of dominionship, where people have interpreted that to mean that people can do as they please because we are in control, we have got complete dominion over the world. How do we deal with those two aspects. What is our role? What's our part to play in this? What can we be doing to make sure that we look after our world for the future generations to come? And as part of that, we'll be looking at, what things are happening in and around the world today in terms of natural disasters, pollution, who's causing that, who's creating that, is it us or is there something bigger at play in all this? What can we do to help our wider world? What can our actions do to have a real positive impact on the world? And further into that, we'll be looking at what are we doing in terms of our actions, and do those actions that we take as human beings actually have an impact? Or is there something bigger at play that should be doing more? How can we collectively work together? Does it work? Does it not work? What can we do to improve? And we're looking at different ideas and different solutions for the workings and improvements of the world that we live in. In the marriage and the family topic, we'll be looking at relationships and looking at whether sex is an expression of love or harmless fun, and debating that and discussing, where does sex stand? Where should it be? Should it be within a loving relationship? Should it be within marriage? Should it be outside of marriage? We'll be debating all those issues around it. Where does religion stand in it? What do Christians think? What do Muslims think? What do the teachings, the scriptures say? Do we need to move on with the times in terms of how things have moved on and developed over periods of time? In the topic of abortion, we'll be looking at where does life begin, how does life begin, and then looking at who has got the right to end life. Is it the mother's choice? Just because she's carrying the baby, does that make her the decision maker in terms of when life should be ending, when life should begin? Or should it be something else in terms of who should take charge of that decision? Who's got the right? Should we have abortion? Should we make abortion illegal? Should we go back to that? Or should we continue with a legalised approach that we have nowadays? And we'll be looking back over history and the impact of that throughout. Another emotive topic that we'll be looking at will be euthanasia. Looking at, in terms of people with terminal illnesses, people who are dying in pain and suffering, should we end their life early? Should they be allowed to end their suffering early in a very dignified way? We'll be looking at how some countries have this as a legal thing, some countries have it legalised. Well, which is the best approach to take? Where does religion stand in this? What are the teachings within Christianity and in Islam? What's their approach? What do they say on this? And we'll be looking at through a very deep case study of $1 Million Baby, who is a rising star in the boxing arena, and suddenly, due to one fatal blow, becomes paralysed, and as a result of that wants to end her life. Should she be allowed that decision? Should she be allowed to end her own life? One of our very controversial topics is crime and punishment, and we'll be looking at within that the death penalty. Should we bring back the death penalty to the United Kingdom? What would the impact of that be? What was the impact when it was part of our justice system? Is it right to execute people? Is it right that people who have committed horrendous crimes be executed for the crimes that they've committed, or do they deserve some form of forgiveness? We'll be looking at countries where the death penalty is in place still, and does that have an impact on reducing and lowering crime rates? Where does religion stand in this? Where do the Christians and the Muslims, where they're thinking, their scriptures stand with it? Where do we stand personally? What are our personal views on the death penalty and the uses and the impacts of it? Another topic of ours, when we look at war, we will question, when is war justified? Is war ever justified? Can we ever have a fair and equal war? Or should we not have war at all? Should we completely live in a peacetime world? What good does war ever bring, if anything at all? We're looking at the impacts, the consequences of war throughout history and also in our modern era as well, and really unpacking, what do people get from war? Should it be ended completely? How can we get to a point where that actually is? How do we live a more peaceful world? Within the war topic, we'll be looking at nuclear warfare and looking at how different countries use these as carrot danglers to threaten other countries, to try and create power. And we'll be looking at, what are the key issues, the key ethical, moral problems with having those in terms of, in the hands of evil dictators and people who could use and abuse their power over others. As part of the human rights and social justice topic, we will be looking at discrimination and looking at how people over time have been discriminated and people are prejudiced, but looking at how we can move away from those discriminatory and prejudiced views and how we can make a better world, a more equal world for everyone, linking in the human rights, looking at where the human rights first came in, and looking at how we can live a better world by applying those human rights and making people live in a much more equal-based system. Within our social justice topic, we'll be looking at poverty and looking at who's responsible to look after and cater and care for those who are more vulnerable than other people. Looking at where do we stand, where is our responsibility to the wider world in terms of we live in a more economically developed country. Well, what about the less economically developed countries? Should we be giving them more support? Should we be doing more for them? Or should we be focusing more in and around what goes on in our own country? Again, that will be another debatable area that we'll be looking at. As you'll have seen from a very brief snapshot, and I do say very brief snapshot of the slides that you've been looking at, in terms of the content, there is much more content, much more ethical thing that we'll be looking at within our GCSE Religious Studies. And as you've seen from that, we're not trying to teach you to be religious. We're not wanting you to become the next vicar. Yes, if that's what you want to be, that's absolutely fine. But this GCSE course is not a qualification in that. This is about opening your mind to the world that we live in. What I often say to students is that when you come to GCSE Religious Studies, it's like opening the newspaper, like turning on the news and looking at the world in different angles, from different perspectives, in a very educated, very academic way. So we've got informed ideas about what is going on in the world in and around us. So please don't think this GCSE is to try and make you religious, try and make you believe in God. It's not at all. So please don't think that. As you can see from this slide here, GCSE Religious Studies is about religion, it's about ethics, it's about the ideas of arguing, evaluating, looking at the morals and moral perspectives, actually creating in yourself a moral compass. Where is your direction? Where is your thinking? Where are your morals? What is right and wrong for you? And it's about making sure that you create a very mature and open mind to the world. And by doing that, we will have lots of debates, we'll have lots of critical thinking, and within that we will make sure that you have a very informed, knowledgeable idea in terms of making your own conclusions. Lots of our lessons are based around debating and discussion. It's not about how much writing we can get down, it's more about the discussion, the debate, the thinking, and then deciding, right, this is the right decision because of X, Y, Z. That backs up the informed ideas that we will create. As you can see from this slide, GCSE Religious Studies can take you down many different paths in terms of your careers. This is just a handful of some of those careers that you've probably been thinking about in terms of what you might want to do post GCSE, post A-level and post degree for some of you that want to take that particular route. As you can see, the skills that you would develop at GCSE Religious Studies will take you down many avenues and very advantageous in terms of crossing over lots of skill set areas that will really support you in many professions that you might want to go in the future. Don't underestimate the skill set that you will develop at GCSE Religious Studies. As you can see, it offers a broad and wide range of skill set that can be encompassing to many different professions and career paths that you may choose throughout your life. And again, some more career paths that you might be thinking about, giving a little bit more information in terms of how GCSE Religious Studies would help link towards those career paths, so please have a read at them. And again, be thinking about if that's the areas that you want to go into in the future, then GCSE Religious Studies will certainly have a part to play in terms of helping you get to where you want to be. A number of years back now, I contacted one of the leading universities at the University of Cambridge and asked them what their thoughts were in terms of GCSE religious studies, and this is what they sent me, and you can see that it's one of their key subjects. I've highlighted red so you can see it there. They do value religious studies. They value the skill set, the background, the study that you would have had, the skill set that you would have developed at GCSE. They value that in terms of when they're looking at recruiting students onto their degree courses. So in terms of your reflection now then, if you enjoy finding out about issues that affect us all in the world, then maybe GCSE Religious Studies is for you. If you enjoy learning about the issues that are constantly in the news, in the media, then again, Religious Studies might just be for you. If you enjoy looking at topics that really make you think, and really make you think deep and hard in terms of what is right, what is wrong, is that the right decision, is that the wrong decision, why have they made that decision, what's the thinking behind it, what do other people think about it, and then come to some kind of conclusion, then again, religious studies could just be a subject for you. And also, if you enjoy being able to say what you think, because this subject will allow that. It will allow you to say your thinking, your conclusions, and actually get marks in the exam for it. There aren't many GCSEs out there that allow you to get examination marks for adding your thinking, your opinions, your beliefs, your values, your attitudes, whether that be of a religious kind or a non-religious kind. It's about making sure that you have your say, and you will get credit for that in your exams. Okay, right, thank you for taking the time to have a look and listen at this GCSE Religious Studies presentation. I hope you've had a really good insight there to what GCSE Religious Studies is about and the career path that it can take you down. Please do think about what career you want to go into. Think about the links that can be made. The skill set in GCSE Religious Studies is huge and it's broad and it covers lots and lots of areas, as you can see. Again, this is a snapshot of what will be covered at GCSE. There is much more to it, so please do read the information in your options booklet in terms of some of the more detailed content as to what we cover. You will get lots and lots of support from your religious studies teacher throughout the 3 years that you will study this course. I hope that's been insightful. I hope you've got a lot from that. Should you require any further information, please do not hesitate to get in touch with myself, Mr. Skit. Good luck and make the options that are right for you.